African time. We continue with the story, and now we're joined by Hussein Khalid, human rights activist, social justice campaigner, lawyer, executive director for Vocal Africa. That's a non-governmental organization championing human rights across the continent. Thank you for joining us, Hussein. How are you this Friday?
All right, Asanda. Of course, very disturbed.
Yes.
Very shaken. What is happening within the region and Africa in general.
So let's start in terms of your reaction here. So you just shared some of it now, but when it comes to all these events and as they are unfolding and also, I think, exacerbating the issues, we've got questions but no answers. The Tanzanian government is not saying anything. The media are not reporting, as you heard from our correspondent, Gabriel, when we spoke to him earlier. Let's talk about your thoughts on the Tanzanian authorities and how they're handling these issues.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, quite disappointing that, we have a government that is particularly led by an African woman. And it's something that we celebrated very much, giving women opportunities finally as Africans so that they can lead and they can, show the way. But to now discover that, it's more or less an authoritarianism regime involved in mass killings of its own people, and now even subjecting foreign nationals to horrendous torture is something that is extremely surprising. We've just received information from reliable sources that Agatha has also been dumped last night, but for safety reasons, of course, we can't divulge more information until we are 100% sure of her safety. But what our colleagues have gone through is just unimaginable. And for this also to be done in the name of the president is very, very disappointing.
There are reports that the Kenyan government intervened and demanded that these detainees, from their side at least, be released. What do you know about that?
Yeah, so we were at, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Nairobi, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we camped there until late the night before Boniface Mwangi was released, and we wanted to know what action they had taken. Before going there, they were also just, surprisingly, also just watching the news and following up through the news. And we told them, you can't just do that. You're the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, your national is being held by a foreign country. You must do something. So we sat there until they were able to write a letter, a demand letter, and, they shared that with their counterparts in Tanzania. And, we had to take action for them to take action. So we also were very surprised by their comments that, they have very cordial diplomatic ties with Tanzania. They don't want to ruin that, so they are following the matter up quietly, diplomatically. But, we had to push our Ministry of Foreign Affairs for them to take action.
Well, it's one thing to want to do things quietly, but we live in an era of social media, and we saw clips from that court appearance of opposition leader Tundu Lissu showing in terms of court proceedings what was transpiring. If we go back to the case of Kenyan activist and former Justice Minister Martha Karua, the reasons that she was given for her detainment and her refused entry into court was that there were security concerns. But from those clips on social media, we saw a heavy police presence. So clearly it seems, as one would read into it, that there is capacity for law enforcement and security implementations. How do you read into that?
Yeah, I'm among those who were detained at the airport and then deported back to Kenya, together with the former Chief Justice Willie Mutunga and another activist, Hanifa Aden. This is the day after Martha Karua and two of her colleagues were also detained and deported back to Kenya. As I said, security reasons was just an excuse they gave, but when we asked, and up to this point in time when Boniface was dropped at the border of Kenya and Tanzania, no clear reasons were given. When we were detained at the airport, we asked them, could you please clarify the mistake omitted. Maybe there's certain documentation we have not provided. Maybe there's a certain Tanzanian law that we have broken that has caused us to be detained here. But up to the point of deportation, there was absolutely no information. There was no reason given for the detainment, and we were just put back on the plane and told to go back to our country. So clearly, we know that 4, 5, 6 extra people in that country is not something that they cannot handle. Their selection, they're allowing people in selectively. We do have 1 or 2 other activists who are allowed in, 1 or 2, like the former Chief Justice was also allowed in. So clearly they were in communication with our government, probably, that then they were, sharing information on who to allow in or not to allow in.
Kenya has its own elections coming up in 2027. In terms of all this activism and solidarity for East Africa freedom, can we read anything into what campaigning will be like for those build up to those elections in Kenya, with these Kenyan activists being so vocal about democracy in East Africa?
Yes, so our elections follow each other year after year. We have elections in Tanzania this year, we have elections in Uganda next year, and Kenya the year after. So we know that our governments share intelligence with each other. In terms of the people, we have an East African cooperation where there's supposed to be free movement of persons and goods. We have formed an East African community network where we try to share as civil society, as human rights defenders, the kind of work that we do. Our going to Tanzania was informed also by some of our colleagues, some of our partners, who intimated that, we need to be very vigilant. We need to observe these court cases so that we ensure justice is delivered. And going there was merely just to show that solidarity. We are not supporting any side of the political divide, but we just wanted to ensure that, justice is done. Yeah. I by no means want to interfere with the court process, but observance of court matters is something that's done across the world. Courts of justice are open places where anyone and everyone, even international observers, are allowed to come in. So this was very, very surprising that we were detained, and then some of our colleagues were taken in, they were tortured. It's absolutely unacceptable.
We'll leave it there for now, Hussein, and thanks again for your time on this Friday.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hussein Khalid is human rights activist, social justice campaigner, lawyer, executive director for Vocal Africa, that's a non-governmental organization championing for human rights across the continent.
What does Africa's future look like?